Good evening, everybody. It is 6:30, so I think we ought to start. Welcome to this, the second meeting of the Manydown Overview Committee. I'm Paula Baker, I'm the chair of the committee. Councillor Bean on my right is my vice chair. Those with yellow labels are council officers, the white labels are the councillors on the committee, with the exception of Councillor Isaac there, who's here because he's the portfolio holder. And we are not expecting any fire alarms this evening. So if the alarms do go off, then we have to evacuate the building immediately. There are fire exits at the rear and at the side of the room, and we go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. And for this evening we have the special joy of avoiding the stacks of furniture, and so need to take extra care than normal as we go through the entranceway of Dean's Building. The meeting is being webcast live on the internet. Yes, it is, and so be aware of that. And I would ask, please, if you have a mobile phone with you, please could you either switch it off or switch it on to silent. Thank you very much indeed. So we have some apologies for absence and some substitutions. So I believe that Councillor Faulkner has sent his apologies, and we have the pleasure of Councillor Mrs. Tucker as substitute. And is there also an apology from Councillor Peach? Who's not well? We hope he recovers soon. And we have Councillor Watts here, who's substitute of Councillor Keating, I believe. Thank you. Then could I ask you all, please, if you have any declarations of interest to declare? No? No one? Fine. Then the next item on our agenda is the minutes of the committee meeting on the 1st of September. Are you agreed that those are an accurate record of our meeting? Yes? May I sign those? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I've not been informed of any urgent matters, except for one item, which I think I can mention, which is that the council has posted its response to the planning inspector on the concerns that he raised on the local plan. There's a reference to that in the paper before us, and Mr. Bailey's produced paper copies, because although we've had emails earlier this afternoon, I know we're not all able to pick them up immediately, and there are paper copies here, and it will be a public document, and I believe it will be up on the website tomorrow morning, or later on tomorrow. But I suggest that rather than dealing with that as a separate item, we simply include that as part of the discussion on the white paper, where there's a reference to the inspector's concerns. And no one has any other urgent items they want to raise? Okay, and we're very pleased that we have two members of the public here, but they are content to listen to us and don't wish to to make any comments to us. It's nice to see them. In which case, can we move on to item 5, which is an update on the planning and delivery strategy. And do you wish to introduce it, this portfolio holder?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm pleased that we've got to this stage, and now we've had some very detailed work done by consultants working with officers in connection with two things particularly. Firstly, some proposals for a planning strategy to take us forward with the bearing in mind the objective of developing the land, which is what we're tasked to do, and secondly, looking at how we might best structure the vehicle with our partners in Hampshire County Council for the delivery of the best delivery of development on the site, aiming to achieve all of the objectives that we have as a council. And I think that this obviously there are sensitive, confidential matters that are in these papers, and you, as Chairman, will be deciding how best to that is dealt with, no doubt. And I have to say that the pink papers arrived. I received them on Tuesday, so I've had to do some speed reading to make sure that I understand them, and they obviously cover some very complicated issues. And so I think I've probably said enough at this point, and so I'm going to leave it to the lead officer, Richard Bailey, to take us through, if that's what you want us to be doing tonight.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Obviously, we are here, and the role that we're looking at is comments for the Manydown Executive Committee, acting in its capacity as the landowner, rather than with the council's planning authority hat on. This is a very different issue as the landowner, and a different approach that we need to take. You mentioned how we might organise the meeting, and what I'm hoping is that we can have a discussion on the white paper, on the open paper that Mr. Bailey is going to introduce to us in a moment, and see how far we can get with that, and if we then feel that we need to start discussing matters that are in the confidential pages, then I regret that we will move into a private session at that point and switch the webcast off and say goodbye to the members of the public who are here. And hopefully at that point in time we will try and give them an idea, if we can, of how long we can foresee needing to be in private, so that if they wished they could wait and rejoin us. So over to you, please, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. And just following on from your point, the papers you have in front of you tonight really seek to actually ensure that the landowner interests, that's the Basingstoke and Hampshire joint landowner interests, and Manydown are protected, to particular strategies that we've looked at. Councillor Isaacs mentioned, and that we've signalled back at the last meeting of this committee on the 1st of September, we'll be doing some further work and reporting back on. So I'm pleased to say we're reporting back on the draft Manydown town planning strategy, and the draft Manydown delivering the financial strategy. In terms of the draft Manydown town planning strategy, we asked URS to look at a number of different planning scenarios, And in order to protect the landholding interests, the recommendation from that discussion and that analysis from URS is that the landowners, that's ourselves in Hampshire, to continue to progress work to prepare an outline planning application with the ability to be able to submit detailed planning application as and when appropriate, together with a detailed master plan and with public engagement at appropriate points. That's the recommendation that we'll be making to the MEC next Tuesday, and therefore which this committee needs to scrutinise. In relation to the draft Manydown delivering the financial strategy, we asked GVA Grimley Limited to provide some advice on different forms of delivery and financial mechanisms, and against some objectives, and those objectives are set out in paragraph 3.4.2, top of page 6 of the white paper. Against those objectives, the view from GVA was that the partners, that's ourselves and Hampshire, should undertake further detailed exploration of a joint venture model in order to consider that as the preferred mechanism for the Manydown project. And we are therefore recommending that during the course of the sort of first half or 3/4 of next year, we undertake some detailed business case analysis of a joint venture model in conjunction with Hampshire and whoever are the appointed consultants. In addition to that, I think it's worth just saying that Hampshire, our partners, have been undertaking a parallel process to the one that we're going through now. Their parallel process started in October, had a meeting also this week with the leader, and culminates on the 12th of December with an executive member policy and resources meeting. They are taking similar papers through their processes, and on the basis that we would jointly, between ourselves and Hampshire, progress in the same way, they are so far during their process comfortable with the recommendations that we are putting forward. And certainly from the meeting they had with their leader day before yesterday, both of those recommendations are still they're still happy to proceed with, on the basis that we would do it with them. The other thing that's probably worth noting at that point is, in addition to those recommendations, Hampshire had also through that process, or are also through that process, going through an approval route for paying the contribution that or their share of the purchase of Manydown. So that's also going through that approval process and should culminate on the 12th of December with that recommendation approved. Finally, I think it's just worth saying that next year will, as you can probably appreciate from the two strategies that we've put in front of you today, there'll be an awful lot of technical work next year on the planning strategy and the detailed master plan, and also on the delivering the financial strategy. And that will take some time, and so at the moment I'm indicating that the sort of milestones for reporting back are likely to be April and October next year. Those are the key sort of timescales for which we're likely to have some material information to be able to discuss, both for the Manydown Overview Committee and the Manydown Executive Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. Members. Right, I see Councillor Potter and then Councillor Golding.
Could I just seek your guidance, really? I know how difficult this is, really, when the mass of the information we had before is on pink papers, and I obviously heard your preamble. I mean, my position, I think, and I say it on the public record, is that I would want to ask some questions around the joint venture model that's the preferred option, but to be frank with you, and I say on the public record again, probably to argue against that and to argue for something else. But I'm not sure I can do it just in the context of the white papers. I probably would need to do it in terms of the information that's contained in the pink papers, and I don't want to be disingenuous in the way that I approach this and embarrass anybody here. So I'm just seeking guidance, really. I mean, I don't want to say too much too quickly and have you rule me out of order. I know this is really difficult, and I dislike pink papers full stop, really, but we have what we have, and you know, I just give notice that that's the line I want to adopt.
Well, yes, thank you for your discretion on that. But yes, I think we will have as much of a discussion as we can first, and then move into private, so that you can have you can raise the points that you wish to raise. I think all of us are more comfortable. It's our nature as the kind of authority that we are, that everything is public, but by virtue of what it is, this cannot be, and we have to be cautious. So thank you, and we'll take note that you're going to raise issues, Councillor Potter. Councillor Golding.
Questions, Richard, relating to confidentiality. Paragraph 3.3.2, the white paper, says potential planning approaches considered range from outline and detailed planning applications, which is straightforward, to other statutory planning mechanisms. Now, I can see that we need to keep the pros and cons confidential, but is the actual nature of the other mechanisms considered in itself confidential? Could we at some point disclose what other mechanisms we have actually looked at, even though we can't say what the pros and cons are?
Yeah, for two reasons. One, the commercially sensitive in the way that the developer progresses its planning strategy, and two, some of those statutory mechanisms, in fact most of those statutory mechanisms would require discussion with the local authority element of the council, and therefore it would prejudice the discussions that we would have with the local authority element of the council that haven't been discussed with them yet.
So that is, no, we can't even mention what they are.
No, we can't mention what they are.
Second question, 3.5.1 about this garden cities and large sites says that the size of development set out in the economic master plan is consistent with the large sites infrastructure program. Now, the economic master plan is a public document, and the size of development in there is 8,000. The second pink paper uses a different number, which I'm not going to mention publicly. Can we as members be given some confidential briefing as to how the second number was calculated, please?
Yes, you can, confidentially.
When?
I think that will be when we go into the private session.
Oh, right.
But I believe you can have that today. Yes, Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Chair. Just on to the joint venture. I wonder if Richard could just put a bit of flesh on the bones. What are the benefits to the borough and the county for going in for a joint venture? I'm just a bit concerned that we could be losing influence, could be potentially losing profit maybe. What is the setup going to be with that joint venture? Is it going to be similar to the leisure park? Could you just give us a few more sort of insights what the thinking is on that line?
I think Mr. Bailey will find that extremely difficult without revealing information that's on the pink papers, but we can certainly have that discussion once we go into private. I have a feeling that we're going into private extremely quickly. But yes, please do.
In 3.52, it talks about government funding for infrastructure programs. I take it we're allowed to talk about that. Do we know how much money is actually available? Because when it's gone to the committee, the deficit for the new local plan is over £100 million for infrastructure and improvement. I just wonder how much capital is up there from central government.
The large infrastructure programme was a programme that came out in May, April and May of this year, had a deadline at the end of May, and I think the intention is to then have some bidding again next year, probably I guess after the election next year. At the time when it came out, it had a figure of 1 billion put against it, and so we didn't put a submission into a large infrastructure programme back at the end of May. But we're anticipating that there will be a similar call probably after the election.
I see no other indications of anyone wishing to say anything at this point. I rather suspect that there could be quite lengthy discussion then of the pink papers. Do members feel they're not I suspect we're not in a position where we can say to our visitors, pop outside and you can, we'll call you back in 10 minutes when we go back into open. I think we're going to be considerably longer than that. But in spite of that, it's entirely up to you as to whether you wish to wait in the anteroom and if you are still there when we will go back into public session before the end of the meeting, and we'd be happy to call you back in if you're still there. But we quite understand if you prefer to make better use of your time, but it may have been only for a few minutes, but thank you for coming in and joining us this evening. Thank you very much indeed, and good night. Right, members, are we all agreed that we now wish the meeting to become confidential? One, I move that pursuant to section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting on the ground that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing it, and therefore that exempt information is likely to be disclosed as defined in the appropriate paragraph of Schedule 12A of the Act. Would you like to second that? Right, members, we are now going back into public session of the Manydown Overview Committee, and so now any discussion of pink papers has to end. Do we believe there are any members of the public still remaining outside? Because if so, we should invite them back in.
I think we all know it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that silly.
No, we are certain that they did the sensible thing and went. And the webcast is now back on. So we've had an extensive, detailed and I think very useful discussion of the papers that were before us, and there will be a detailed minute that will include some confidential minutes for the same reason that the papers were confidential beforehand, the commercial sensitivity. And we also have some recommendations that we are very happy to make public. And I'd ask Mr. Bailey if he could please to summarise those for us.
Thank you, Chair. The public recommendations are: the Manydown Overview Committee recommend, first of all, to support the recommendation in the paper to proceed with work to prepare a detailed master plan and submit relevant planning applications for Manydown. That's the first one. The second one is the Manydown Overview Committee recommend or endorse the consideration of exploring other potential planning mechanisms during the course of the future. The third one is Manydown Overview Committee support the recommendation to undertake further exploration of a joint venture model for the Manydown project together with a complementary mechanism. Fourth one is the Manydown Overview Committee would expect future partners to work within the future agreed design principles and delivery objectives for Manydown. And the fifth one is the Manydown Overview Committee believe that social infrastructure includes affordable and social housing, and this should be delivered in an integrated manner. In that context, the Manydown Overview Committee believes that achieving 40% affordable housing is important.
Committee, yes, Councillor Gold.
Could I just, Chair, for the sake of clarification for members of the public, ask us to add to the first point that the references to planning application and the master plan refer to the area of Manydown within the proposed for allocation in the draft local plan and not the whole of the site.
That is the support. That is what the recommendation says, and so the actual wording would mirror what the recommendation says in the white paper, in the public paper.
Thank you. With that clarification, is the committee happy to agree those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you all very much. In which case, can I please, on everybody's behalf, thank Mr. Bailey and also thank Stefan for the help that they've given us this evening in dealing with this. Thank you all very much indeed, and declare the meeting is closed.